life transitions, teenage to adult. And if you watch to the end, we have a bonus 3 ideas to think about. Hi, it's Kerry, helping you and me live our best autistic lives. Let's get into it. Transitioning from child to teenager and teenager to adult can be a little bit traumatic. When my son was 14, he was starting to really struggle. And by the time he was 16, he had very bad depression. And I can remember him saying to me, "Mum, I just want to be 4, where I didn't have to think about what I was doing next. I just could hold your hand and we'd be okay." And I said to him, "My boy, change is hard, very hard. But the difficulty, particularly with teenager to adult, is they fluctuate between being a child and starting to have adult traits. But at the same time, there's lots going on in their hormones and in their brains. And it can be a really difficult time. But it's also incredible to watch them grow up. What we've seen is that our son needs a lot of time before a decision is made. So, for example, he's going to be going to university in 2 years' time. But we got the prospectus for the university yesterday. And it was interesting to see that the thought of changing from the college he's at now to university was very, very stressful for him, just looking at the prospectus. And he said, "It just makes me very worried and very stressed looking at this." But the idea is, over the next 2 years, we will actually take him to the university lots of times. And my husband will do the trip with him by train lots of times. So by the time he gets there, he will have knowledge of where things are, how things work, how he's going to get there, how he's going to get home, how long it will take. And even with clothing, we buy clothes 6 months in advance of using them so that they're in his drawer, so he knows what they look like by the time it comes to actually using them. We go through the options and let him choose the areas that he's interested in and respect the choices he's making. And sometimes that can be challenging, but also loosening some of the boundaries, but making sure other ones are in place, is how we've negotiated moving from teenager to adult. So in 2 weeks, he'll be 20. And in some ways, he's always been quite an old soul. But I actually think this change has been the most difficult for him. Partly because there were he had mental health difficulties, but also being an adult comes with more responsibility. And I think particularly with autistic people, and this autistic person in particular, some things just take time. And I know he will need support. I have support from my son, my husband, my best mate, and also a mental health service. So for me, I didn't know I was autistic. And so in many respects, there were certain aspects I found quite traumatic. So I chose to go overseas. But I can remember sobbing from the time I said goodbye to my parents for about 4 hours into the flight, to the point the air hostesses kept coming up to me and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But it was just so hard to change, even though it was something I wanted to do. In a neurotypical family, if there is one autistic person, traits that are actually autistic traits can be seen as personality traits. And so it can appear that you have a difficult personality rather than you have an autistic trait and an area that you struggle with. But we all get there. We all move from one stage to another. But I think for autistic people, it takes us longer to do that transition. It certainly has for me. Bonus point number 1, information is key. For my son and myself, we research a lot so that we have a lot of information about whatever we are dealing with. I can research and see what strategies have worked for other autistic people, and I try and apply them to me to see if they work or if they don't work. I was diagnosed at 51. And when I was looking on YouTube for autistic channels, I didn't see anybody my age talking about a late diagnosis, because the ones I have seen, people got diagnosed in their 20s, and life could have been less tough if I had support or if I had known I was autistic at the time. Bonus tip number 3, it's very important to have a support person, to have a sounding board, someone you can actually talk to about the things you're struggling with. Because I learned over the last 20 years that actually holding on to all of those emotions was incredibly unhelpful. But I also found, and still find, talking about it quite overwhelming. Click the lifestyle transition playlist to see more in this series.